In the beginning of an adventure, the hero makes a decisive step. Crossing the threshold. Stage 3 of the hero's journey. The hero has heard the calling, and he has reviewed and considered the pros and the cons. Is it doable? And he either is ready and willingly steps over the threshold, or he is considered ready and is kind of forced to step over the threshold. Crossing the threshold means that the hero enters the world of adventure. He enters the unknown. Now this could be many, many things and could have many, many forms and shapes in actual mythology. Now in a fairy tale it's probably just entering the dark forest where there are wolves and witches and other dangerous beings. In a myth, with the hero being a demigod, it's probably going to be something more challenging. It could actually be entering the underworld or something like that. But in any case, the hero moves out of the known frame of the village into the world of adventure. And at least he has an idea what his first step is into this world. So perhaps he has, like Jason and the Argonauts, has to enter a ship and cross the ocean, or he has to, maybe just leave the known village. Now sometimes he's not quite willing to do so. He's not quite yet ready to do so. And when he's not ready to do so, sometimes in mythology he's forced to make that step. It's kind of clear, but he needs that final push to really have this decision integrated fully. Now, that's maybe because there is no way back. Everything else is impossible. A classical example of that would be Jonah and the whale. Now, the rough story is, and we've covered this a little bit in previous videos, so Jonah was asked by God to go on this mission, and he considered it, and he felt like, no, I really don't want to do it. So he fled from God, and he goes to Habor, and he moves onto the ship, and then the sea starts to be so wild that all the seamen are afraid, and they do this oracle, and they figure out it's Jonah. And basically what happens is they decide to throw him into the water, and he's almost kind of okay with it because he knows it's his fault and he doesn't want to endanger all the people. So being thrown into the water, which is almost like certain death, a whale swallows him and eventually spits him out. But as he is in the whale, in the belly of the whale, he, goes through this inner transformation. So eventually, when he's spit out, he has accepted his mission. This process of going through the belly of the whale, which is actually one of the technical terms that Joseph Campbell used in connection with this stage, or sometimes described as a separate stage, but it's really part of this stage. It's like this incubation phase that we have to go through in order to really know what the next step is. So sometimes we need to internally process our next step and then actually take it and cross the threshold into unknown territory. And sometimes that's scary. It's not the unknown territory itself that presents an immediate threat, but we're scared. We don't know what it's all about. Therefore, we need this inner processing time to actually do it. So there's, in a sense, there's two thresholds. It's the threshold of entering the belly and the threshold of actually moving into the world, which is, in a sense, the more real threshold. But we also need this withdrawal to ponder what we're going to do in order to actually go into the world. So the pictogram we use for this is basically a person entering a threshold, opening a door to the unknown and moving through into the world behind the door, which we have represented as something more dark, something more unknown. So this stage really, in a way, concludes the entire, shall we say, cognitive process of hearing, perceiving the calling, and then reviewing whether it's doable, and finally deciding, yes, I can do it. We've met our first helper, which is the herald. We've met our first challenge, which is the refusal, and sometimes that there's an actual person who presents the refusal to us, which is a personified challenge. And then from the thesis and antithesis, now the synthesis is to move over the threshold. In a way, this moving over the threshold is the next level of, accepting and internalizing the destiny of the hero. By making the decision to actually do something now for the first time. It's not a big thing. Crossing the threshold is not a gigantic heroic deed. It's just stepping into the world of adventure. It's like if you do if you actually consider the hero's journey as an actual travel, this is like buying the ticket and entering the train or the plane or the boat or whatever it is. It's not yet a big thing, but you're on your way. And sometimes you're on your way in a way that you can't really easily turn back. I mean, if you're on the train and the train starts moving, you're in the journey. You're in the boat. You're in the whatever it is. So if we apply this stage onto our own life, this step number 3, is really about making a decision about the first step or the first steps and taking the first step. Now, taking the first step doesn't necessarily mean you already are deeply involved in the whole thing, but you start going into the thing, whatever it is. And that's really, really important. And a lot of projects that we do, we all kind of ponder how should we do it, etc. And we don't really feel ready. So we sometimes need this incubation time to withdraw, think about it. What do we really want to do? And then make the next step. Once we found it, make the step into the thing. If you have to write a paper for university or school, then it's really, really important to start eventually writing it. Open your laptop and start writing the title of the paper. If it's nothing else, the title. And if it's not going to be the final title, that's okay. Just write the title of the paper. Just write something. Then what's the next steps? What would be like the chapter titles, or anything really. Or maybe for the first chapter, for the introduction, what are a couple of things you want to mention? Or do you have your literature already? So it's really important to start with something. That's the step into adventure. Even if you start gathering your resources, which will be the next step, you need to get things going. You need to get invested. You will notice that, as before, there is a logical sequence. You have to hear the call in order to consider the refusal, and you have to have evaluated the whole thing in order to be able to make the next step. Because if you haven't done the previous steps properly, this is where you find your difficulties. So maybe you've heard the call, but you haven't really considered it well, and you don't really feel fully on board, and then now you have difficulties to actually make a step. And in everyday life we find the same situation. For example, let's say you're going to write a paper. We have some information. We've read some books, and we know what's important about those books. Then, if we give ourselves a little bit of time to review internally, to incubate this information, to process this information, then we will be able to write something creatively. But if we haven't done the previous steps, if we haven't actually read the literature, or if we have read it but we've forgotten most of it, we haven't, looked at what is important, we haven't developed a system to extract the important information out of the literature, then there's no way we can do the next thing. So then the incubation phase is kind of a hesitation. We kind of are stuck. We kind of like, we're in the belly of the whale. We don't know how to get out of there, and we procrastinate. That's very often the reason why, because we haven't complete the previous steps properly. Once we've done that, and once we've pondered over it, and we've reviewed it, and we've gone through the belly of the whale, we can actually take the step. And in many practical projects, this is a phase where you, having reviewed all the information, you now make a decision what your plan is. And this plan doesn't have to be like a plan for the whole thing. Sometimes that is impossible because you don't really know what's going to happen. But at least what's going to be your opening move? What's going to be your next step? And once you've done that and you know more, you know what the result is, you can go back, get more information, review the new information, and do the next step. Plan the next step and do the next step. Now, we're not yet really, in terms of applying this model, at the phase where we do like the main transformative action. It's not the main transformative thing for the hero to actually enter the dark forest. And even if he enters like the unknown sea, the underworld even, it's still not the main thing. There's going to be like a main challenge that he's going to meet at some later point. So we're not doing the main thing, but we're getting started. And that's so important in every project in life. So think about it. In your own life, have you ever entered a new territory? And did you have a chance to prepare? And if so, how did you prepare? How did you prepare and how did you plan for it? I'm curious to know about your experiences of crossing the threshold in all kinds of areas of your life. If you liked the video, please give us your like and subscribe if you haven't already done, and looking forward to see you again in the next video.